Let's use our imagination and our thoughts to get to the early 1930s, to Berlin. We find ourselves in the center of Berlin. Bayerische Viertel, the Bavarian district, is the name of that district. It's just 3 stops away from the Tiergarten, the zoo. There is a station of the metro there. There is Baryszew Park. And one day, in those early 1930s, you can read an inscription on the benches. Jews must not sit on these benches. You could say, it's unpleasant, it's not fair, it's not right. But after all, there are so many benches around. You can sit somewhere else. Of course you can. In that district, and that was a district that was inhabited by intellectuals, by the intelligentsia, German, of Jewish origin. Albert Einstein used to live there. Nelly Sachs, the Nobel Prize winner, a politician and industrialist, Walter Rathenau, who was Minister of Foreign Affairs. There was a swimming pool, and over its door an inscription read, "Jews are forbidden to enter." You could say, well, pleasant this is not, but there are so many places in Berlin where you can take a bath or swim, so many lakes, canals, it's nearly like Venice. At the same time, you can read somewhere else, Jews must not belong to German singing associations. So what? All right. They want to sing, they want to make music. Let them just meet somewhere else, they will do their singing. All right. What comes up later is an order, really. More of an order than of an inscription. Non-Aryan children must not play with Aryan children, with the German children. All right, they'll play on their own. And then you read, we only sell bread and food to Jews after 5 p.m. All right, less choice. This makes your life harder. But after all, after 5 p.m. you can still do your shopping. Now, I warn you, I'm getting used to a thought. That thought that someone may be excluded becomes mediated into our lives. The thought that somebody can be stigmatized, that someone may be alienated. And that's how it is done, step by step, slowly. People begin to see that this is something normal. Both victims and the perpetrators, the witnesses, those whom we in English call bystanders, those who see it become familiar, and they become acquainted with that thought, familiar with the idea that the minority that produced Einstein, Nelly Sachs, Henry Heine, Mendelssohn's, and many Nobelists, that it is different, that it can be pushed beyond the margin of the society, that they are different people, that they are alien people, that they are the people that carry germs, that cause pandemics. And this now is a horror that's dangerous. This is where what may happen soon takes its origin. And let me tell you, if you consider that, and if we remember the words of Mr. President, power that at that time ran sly policy. For example, they met all the claims of workers. The 1st of May was never celebrated. All right, they gave you a day that was free from work. They introduced Kraftig heute, so a special holiday for workers. They could also fight unemployment. They knew how to play on the dignity of a nation. Germans move up from the shame of the Treaty of Versailles. Have your pride back. And that government also saw that people were slowly engulfed by this lack of sensitivity. They ceased to react to evil. And that was the moment when that government could speed up the process of evil. What came later was something that developed immediately. Jews could not get jobs, they could not emigrate, and then quickly Jews would be sent to ghettos, to Kaunas, to Riga, to my ghetto, the Litzmannstadt, the Łódź ghetto. Most people from there were later sent to Kulldorf, Chełmno on the Ner, where they were murdered in lorries with exhaust gases.
Many of us are frustrated with the nearly 80 million Americans who are still not vaccinated, even though the vaccine is safe, effective, and free. While the vaccines provide strong protection for the vaccinated, we read about and hear about and we see the stories of hospitalized people on their deathbeds among the unvaccinated over the past few weeks. This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. This is not about freedom or personal choice. It's about protecting yourself and those around you. We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of it.
Today we're going to be announcing some additional measures to keep New Yorkers safe.
Mayor Bill de Blasio issued sweeping new vaccine mandates for the private business sector.
One standard that applies to everyone.
All employees will now be required to be fully vaccinated, 2 doses by December 27th. The mandate extends to customers of those businesses ages 12 and up.
I think it's really gone way beyond anything I could have ever imagined to happen in the United States of America.
Mary Josephine Generoso owns an Italian pastry shop in Brooklyn. She defied the last round of city mandates that required customers and staff to have at least 1 dose and is now part of a lawsuit fighting against what she says is discrimination and segregation.
It should be a choice if somebody wants to get vaccinated. We should not be penalizing the small segment, because at this point it is a small segment of society that chooses not to be vaccinated.
Lawsuits against a similar mandate issued by the Biden administration are making their way through the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals. Attorney Seth Behrensweig says he won't be surprised if other cities follow New York's mandates, but businesses will fight back.
Companies will probably tee up some kind of a due process argument and will try to contest this. There's a labor shortage right now. The last thing companies want to do is to discipline their employees.
The sudden announcement and fast approaching deadline has some in the business community arguing the timing couldn't be worse for retail businesses that hire seasonal workers for the holidays.
This is devastating for them in terms of having to comply in the next few weeks with this kind of mandate. Who knows what the enforcement process and compliance requirements and penalties are.
The mayor says the rules and how this will all work will be issued on December 15th.
Hey, I'm just going to come right out and say it. Natural infection with COVID works to produce immunity against future severe disease and future infection at a rate that's probably equal to or better than vaccination. There, I said it. Can we just stop denying that actual infection, like almost every other disease that we have vaccines for, getting infected naturally, which, by the way, I hate that word because it feels like organic to me, getting infected in the wild, right, will generate immunity. If it didn't, the vaccine would have a hard time working because the vaccine looks to copy the natural response to the antigen that the disease presents to you. So there's a recent, and this is what we've done. We've politicized the whole thing in the U.S. There's a whole group of public health people that just deny that natural infection matters, right? Paul Offit, virologist, vaccine guru, came on the show and said, yeah, natural infection works, right? Vaccines work. This big study, that's what we need to be saying. The question is, what do you do when you start mandating vaccines and people who've had COVID are then told you also have to get this or you can't work or you can't do this, you can't do that? How do you think they're going to feel in the setting of something that's already been so politically divisive? It's like they went through the COVID mill, they came out, they've had it, and now you're telling them that doesn't count at all. You need 2 doses of an mRNA vaccine, by the way, which is probably going to make you feel like crap for a day or two because that's the immune response, especially if you've been infected before. You got to do that now, or A, you're a bad person, B, you're killing grandma, C, did I mention you're a bad person, and D, you can't work. Okay, I hate it. I hate what we're doing. If you want to create distrust, anger, resentment, and then the next pandemic that comes along, no one listens to you, this is the way to do it. It's absolutely the way to do it. So big study out of Israel, preprint, so not been peer-reviewed yet. Small numbers of sick people. So even though there were big numbers in the trial, it was an observational retrospective trial looking at like vaccinated people versus people who got COVID versus, people who got COVID and got a single shot, 2. And what they found was, looking back, but again, small numbers, so it's hard, small numbers of people who actually got sick, so it's hard to really jump on this, but it's still quite a treatment effect. The people who got natural infection were multiple times more resistant to getting reinfected and hospitalized than people who got both doses of the vaccine. So what I propose is stop shaming the natural infected people. Stop shaming anyone. I like a single dose for people who've been previously infected, but if they don't want to get that, they're immune enough to prevent against severe disease and stuff. And we should have some mechanism for them to show that they've been previously infected. Antibody testing is not great, but if it's positive, at least you could say it's there. If it's negative, it doesn't say much. Proof of a previous PCR positive test, maybe even the honor system, guys. Why do I say this? Because look, an unvaccinated person who hasn't been infected, who lies about it, they're really the biggest danger they are is to themselves. Yeah, they could infect others, they could infect vaccinated people, but at a lower rate. So you're only hurting yourself really, and to a less degree other people. So I think if we brought trust back, if we brought dialogue back, if we depoliticized this nonsense, if we stopped denying science, the same people who say follow the science just ignore the fact that there's this huge community of naturally infected people that are largely immune.
We have known about natural immunity since the Athenian plague in 430 BC. And I'm not talking about before COVID, I'm talking before Christ. So for almost 2,500 years, we've known about natural immunity. So it's strange that suddenly people are questioning that. The purpose of the vaccine is to have a milder disease if you get infected. But if you already have been infected, because maybe you were infected before the vaccine existed, then you already have excellent immunity. You have stronger, longer-lasting immunity than you have from the vaccines. So this idea that you're going to fire a nurse who was working in the COVID wards for many months, taking care of COVID patients who got infected, who recovered, and who now have better immunity than those hospital administrators who were sitting at home or doing Zoom meetings and who then didn't get COVID but got vaccinated. They have less immunity than this nurse who was at the front line taking care of patients, but now those administrators are firing those nurses, even though they have better immunity. So we should do the opposite. Hospitals should hire nurses and other staff with natural immunity, and then they should assign those to the geriatric wards where there are older people who are extra sensitive, who are frail. And even if they're vaccinated, they might be at risk of dying from COVID. So we should utilize them to take care of older patients who are at risk. The same with nursing homes. Nursing homes should go out and try to hire people who have natural immunity. They're the ones who are least likely to infect the residents. And we're doing the opposite. They're being fired. I don't understand how any hospital president who supposedly should do what's best for the patients in the hospitals and take care for them, and who supposedly should be enlightened and informed about these things, how they can do the very opposite of what is best for their patients. Same with university presidents. They're supposed to be the beacons of the enlightenment and of knowledge, and they're going contrary to these basic facts that we have known about for a couple of thousand years.
So this is pretty fascinating, because you're basically saying that the hospital health workers with natural immunity can be kind of like the front line of the focused protection program going forward, basically.
Yes, yeah. And actually that's what they did during the Athenian plague, 430 BC. They used people who had recovered from the plague to take care of sick patients.
Fascinating. So when it comes to infection, okay, is natural immunity better in preventing infection than vaccination? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. So there was one of the best studies was from Israel, and they looked at and they saw that if you are vaccinated, you are 27 times more likely to have symptomatic COVID disease compared to if you have natural immunity. With the confidence interval between, I think it was 13 and 54 or something. So it's a big difference. And when looking at the hospitalizations, there was also more protection from natural immunity than from vaccine immunity. When it came to death, there was 0 death in both groups, so both the vaccinated and those with natural immunity were well protected against death, so that's good. But yeah, so the immunity is stronger and it's longer lasting than if you have a vaccine. And that's not a surprise. That's what we would expect. The vaccine sort of targeted a specific part of the virus, while natural immunity sort of have a more broad protection. It also has to do where the body encounters the virus for the first time. And if it's a natural infection, you encounter it first in your lungs typically. If it's a vaccination, you do it in the arms. So that might also have to do something with comparing the protection from the two.
Well, sure, but what about, so you're talking about, symptoms here, but what about just infection itself? A lot of people out there are very concerned about getting infected with COVID.
Well, the vaccine, it works, or the immune system works so that if you get the virus in the body, then that's when the immune system sort of goes into effect. It's not like a Star Trek shield around you that prevents the virus from entering the body. The immune system cannot operate until the virus is in your body. And when the virus enters, it takes some time for the immune system sometimes to sort of get up to speed. It depends on how long ago you had the vaccine or how long ago you had the natural disease. But the fact that somebody tests positive is not really, in my mind, very interesting. If we would test for all the viruses and anybody who was asymptomatic but tested positive because they had been exposed, we would go nuts worrying about all these viruses around there. So it's really the symptomatic disease that we should be concerned about, as well as, of course, hospitalizations and death, which is the most important.